This is CBC Here and Now.
Everybody's wondering actually what's going on, and is it going to reopen? If it's not, is it just a ploy? Is it a tactic? I mean, nobody's really sure what's happening.
A project that was 60% complete.
This is probably the safest place on the planet to go back to school.
Reassuring words, a public health expert weighs in on how to keep students safe.
Things have been very tumultuous, not only in the province, but around the world, as we know, because of the pandemic.
The government says it's finally going to bring down a budget at the end of this month. I'll have more coming up on Here and Now.
Welcome to Here and Now. I'm Carolyn Stokes.
And I'm Peter Cowan. We start tonight in Argentia. Well, there is more reaction on the latest setback in this province's oil industry. Here Now's Terry Roberts is in Placentia today, where a lot is on the line now that the West White Rose project is in limbo.
Standing here in the port of Argentia, the first thing that strikes you is the deafening silence. In the months leading up to the pandemic shutdown, this place was alive with workers, a project that was 60% complete. Now, this massive chunk of concrete has a very uncertain future. This is the bones of the concrete gravity structure for the West White Rose project. Before work was suspended in March, it was common for up to 800 workers to pick up their tools here every day. This platform is critical to Husky's plan to extend the life of the White Rose oil field. But Husky's financials have been battered by the pandemic, and the fate of this project and Husky's very future in this province are up in the air. That's causing great concern for all those connected to oil and gas, but especially here in Placentia Bay, where there were great hopes for this and possibly more projects in the future.
It's quiet. There is no traffic, there's no buzz, there's no vibrant feel to the surrounding area. There's nobody stopping in, and you don't have probably 100 cars stopping to buy fuel at the local gas bars. You don't have them picking up their lunches. So all of that combined, it really puts a cloud on this area.
Everybody, I guess, is disappointed, and I'm certainly disappointed myself because, COVID obviously brought a lot of bad news to the globe, Newfoundland, Placentia, but globally. But even Placentia, we were optimistic because Husky was going to start again in 2021. So we were optimistic that 2021 was going to have a better start. Now to understand that Husky is reviewing the whole operations, and it's going to probably be set back if it's going to start at all, certainly disappointing news to us as well.
Husky wants the federal government to buy into White Rose to save the project. Ottawa says it's in talks. Even though he's just 5 days into his job as port CEO, Penny believes there's only one real solution.
That you have an industry where we are in a global pandemic, and we're facing a much uncertainty. Either way, the federal government has got to step in to steer our country through this turbulent times. And if that is support, whether it be through funding or whether it be in buying an investment stake into the project, that's where it needs to be. But at the end of the day, the federal government has got to be a partner.
Some critics have suggested this is a ploy by Husky Energy to extract money from the federal government. But insiders like Scott Penny doesn't see it that way. He says there's a very real possibility this project could go under. And that's a scenario this province cannot afford. Terry Roberts, CBC News, Port of Argentia.
Well, several residential streets in Deer Lake were shut down today as police reported that shots had been fired in the West Coast community. Residents were warned of an active incident that potentially posed a threat to public safety. Here Now's Colleen Connors brings us this report from the scene.
I'm in a residential area of Deer Lake right now on the corner of the 5th Avenue extension and Reeds Road, and just down the road behind me is Willow Avenue, one of the streets that are closed off to the public right now. There's a large police presence, several vehicles surrounding one home just down the road from me here on Willow Avenue. Now, police say that they are calling that an active scene, but there is no public threat to the public right now, that the scene is contained and it's still active at this time. Now, residents on the street are reminded to stay inside their homes. They're not permitted to be outside. There were reports of shots fired earlier today in that area. Now, Firefighters with the Deer Lake Fire Rescue were called into action around 1:30 this afternoon. There's 29 firefighters with the Deer Lake Fire Rescue. They're all volunteers, and they are currently surrounding all the streets around this street. So firefighters with their trucks are parked all over this residential area, blocking the roads to anyone coming in. So that means no one is allowed home at all. And I've seen a few people trying to enter, trying to get home, and the firefighters are saying that they are not allowed to enter these areas at all at this time. Now, the schools were in a secure school protocol earlier today. That meant that all the doors were in lockdown, that no one was allowed in and out. But I did see many students walking home from school around 3 o'clock this afternoon, a lot of school buses on the move. So it looks as though school was allowed to end today and all the students were allowed to go home. I have to say that the mood here is not overly tense at this time. It seems a lot of people are on the move, driving by, wondering what's going on. And it's still very unclear what exactly is happening behind me here on these areas that are closed off to the public. We're just waiting to find out exactly what happened and what is going on behind me. Colleen Connors, CBC News, Deer Lake.
And we do have an update on that story. RCMP say the issue has now been resolved. A suspect has been taken into custody. Residents in the area are now free to leave their homes. Police say there is no longer a risk to safety. For many high schoolers, this was the first full day back to school. And after 6 months at home, some have mixed feelings about being back, especially grade 12 students who have a lot of questions about what their final year will look like. Here now's Meg Roberts has more.
Traffic on this stretch of Bonaventure Avenue hasn't been this busy since March. Today, it almost felt back to normal with the nerves and excitement that comes with the first day of school, but not completely back to normal.
There's a lot of changes in this school year, especially to graduating students.
All work and no play is the situation for some grade 12 students across the province, and it's hard not to wonder what they may be missing out on, like participating on a sports team or school club, question marks around prom and graduation. Some seniors at Waterford Valley High School worry what that will do to their mental health.
I really hope that stuff ends up going ahead after Christmas. Maybe stuff will start to loosen up. I'm hopeful. I'll be really upset if we don't get a graduation.
Yeah, even though we'll all be together, it's still kind of isolating. Just coming to school and learning could definitely be really tough on people.
Another concern, how seriously fellow classmates will take the protocol set out by the school district, like obeying signage posted on the walls, respecting bathroom capacity, and wearing a mask in communal areas and on buses.
I know a lot of people are really annoyed by it and don't want to wear them, even though we have to, but I think that's going to be a challenge, especially for the teachers.
I think they're going to make it a joke.
Yeah. Mixed reactions.
But many say they're happy just to be back in class instead of the alternative, studying online at home, as college and university students will be doing. It also gives them an opportunity to show off that back-to-school outfit.
I am excited because it was a miracle that I actually found these pants to go with the outfit.
You're feeling your purple pants.
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Meg Roberts, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, the provincial government says it will keep its promise to bring down a budget in September. But the Conservatives and the NDP, well, they say there'll have to be some negotiating with them first. Here now's Mark Quinn explains.
Finance Minister Siobhan Cody made the announcement this morning.
I'm here to advise today that we will have a budget brought forward for the people of the province on September 30th.
Cody said the government will introduce a 3-month interim supply bill on Monday when the House of Assembly reopens. That's money to keep operations and the wheels of government turning. It will ensure government can keep making its payments when the current supply bill expires this month. Conservative leader Ches Crosby says his party supports an interim supply bill, but not one that's 3 months long.
We're 6 months through the financial year, And what we're going to get is a budget that's largely about what already happened. So yes, interim supply, but it's going to be closely negotiated, and we're not going to give them 3 months, I can guarantee that.
NDP leader Alison Coffin agreed 3 months is too long.
I would really need to know, why do they need 3 months? If the budget is coming down on the 30th and they are going to accommodate the estimates process, once that budget has been tabled, they don't need 3 months. They need 1 month.
The finance minister says she doesn't expect the budget will contain any surprises. But both Crosby and Coffin said they might still vote against it if they don't like what's in it. A non-confidence vote that would trigger a general election would require both independent MHAs to also vote against the budget. Mark Quinn, CBC News, St. John's.
Charles Bone shouldn't hold a government position, at least according to the leader of the opposition. Premier Andrew Furey has appointed Bone as head of the Multi-Materials Stewardship Board. He was also a key liaison between government and Nalcor during the planning and sanctioning of Muskrat Falls. During the inquiry, the commissioner said Bone's failure to advise the Premier and others about cost overruns was inexcusable. Chess Crosby agrees.
We cannot have deceit being practiced with no consequences.
And an appointment does not.
And a reward. So it's an example of the Liberal government not acting on moral imperatives and continuing to practice inappropriate patronage.
Do you believe that Mr. Bone should still be working for the provincial government?
No.
Well, staying with politics, former Cabinet Minister Sherrygambin Walsh is addressing her breach of trust. According to the RCMP, she leaked confidential cabinet information. Police say she contacted a senior RNC officer about upcoming promotions. They say she isn't facing any charges because neither party benefited from the leak, so there's a low chance of conviction. Gambin Walsh issued a statement today saying, "It's important for my constituents to know that at no time did I try to influence the RNC promotional process nor allow my friendship with the officer to influence my actions." Well, she remains the MHA for Placentia St. Mary's. Former Premier Dwight Ball removed Gambin Walsh at Service NL as Service NL Minister when the allegations surfaced. CBC asked whether Furey would reinstate her, and the Premier's office responded with this statement from Furey, quoting, "The contents of the RCMP release yesterday are troubling and disheartening. I am seeking advice and reflecting ahead of any next steps." Well, to the courts now, where a once high-flying businesswoman was sentenced today. Anne Squires ran Exit Realty on the Rock before it collapsed into receivership and then bankruptcy more than 4 years ago. She has admitted to fraud, forgery, theft, and breach of trust. And now she's going to jail. Rob Antle has the details.
Judgment Day at Supreme Court as Anne Squires arrives, about to learn her fate after a stunning fall from grace, from giving talks on leadership for the Board of Trade.
What is out there that is going to work in the best interest of the entire corporation?
To winning awards as a top industry performer, to defending herself as her business collapsed and the police moved in.
I had not spoken to or heard from any RNC person.
Squires was charged later that year and pleaded guilty in 2019. To theft from Exit Realty on the Rock and misappropriation of trust funds.
Access Easy Funds.
She also faked property deals to steal more than $500,000 from a payday loan style company for the real estate industry. Having done the crime, she'll now do the time. The Crown asked for 3 years, the defense for 8 months. In the end, it was up to Justice Robert Stack. He stressed that Squires acted with hubris and greed, and made a conscious decision to engage in ongoing criminal conduct. On the flip side, the judge pointed towards her lack of a criminal record, success in her new career in the hospitality industry in a coastal community, and a report that said she's a low risk to reoffend. The judge sentenced her to 2 years less a day behind bars, a term he says gives Squires a reasonable prospect for a fresh start, once she served her time, which began right away. In addition to the sentence, the judge also issued a restitution order, Squires will have to repay Access Easy funds more than $500,000. Rob Antle, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, staying with the courts, the Crown is pushing for an 8-year prison sentence for a man found guilty of being a hired gun in a foiled murder plot. 2 years ago, police caught John Squires with a loaded handgun. They say his motivation was money. Here Now's Ryan Cook reports.
John Squires appeared by video in a St. John's courtroom this morning from a Stephenville jail. Crown prosecutor Lloyd Strickland wants him to stay shackled for an 8-year sentence. He's convicted of trying to kill Brad Summers that night in 2018 when a car he was riding in was pulled over. Squires was outside a house on Calver Avenue to which Summers had been lured. Brandon Glasgow was responsible for the luring, and he was in court today too. The Crown is seeking 5 years for Glasgow on a single charge of conspiracy to commit murder. Strickland says Glasgow was following the orders of his crime boss, Dustin Etheridge, and played his part to perfection, coming within a whisker of being party to a murder. Unbeknownst to all of them, Etheridge's house had been bugged and the police heard everything. They stepped in just in time. Strickland says that Glasgow was heavily influenced by Etheridge, but Squires was only influenced by money and the thrill of pulling the trigger. Both men will be sentenced on October 6th. Ryan Cook, CBC News, St. John's.
Choirs can raise their voices and wind instrument players are allowed to practice together again, just so long as they follow new rules set out by public health officials. The guidelines state there can't be more than 100 musicians or singers in a group, and they have to be part of a school, faith-based group or community group. Sessions can last an hour, but the actual singing and playing time has to be half of that. Masks are mandatory for choirs even while singing. The guidelines ask people to consider singing in smaller groups and at lower volumes. Musicians don't have to wear masks while playing, but they are required when moving around the room. Public health recommends bands cover their instruments and use partitions and physically distance. There are also recommendations about increasing airflow in spaces and keeping at least a half hour between sessions so there's time to clean.
Well, there's a new mural in Maquette. It's a reflection of the community's Inuit heritage, the full length of the general store. Young people designed it, they painted it, and they just started in July and they've already finished. Take a look.
So this project kind of was an idea of mine for a while. Last year I spent a lot of time traveling up north in the Canadian Arctic and in Greenland, and I noticed that in the Inuit communities there were a lot of art around everywhere, and murals especially. And so when I came back for the winter, I thought about where could I do this in my town, and then it just progressed into like, how can I get kids involved and can I hire people to help me do a mural? So I did up the proposal, and Department of Education and Economic Development gave me money to do it. I don't have any experience doing murals, so I researched a little and I still found it quite intimidating, all the stuff I was reading online. So I remember hearing about Botwood and how many murals they have. So I reached out to their association, and a guy named Mike offered all kinds of advice. What material I should paint on, what varnish I should use, priming and stuff like that. So I got all my know-how from him, and from there on out it was just me and the 4 interns. To decide on the design, I had a couple meetings with them before we even touched any paint or anything. I asked the interns to think of themes or draw pictures of things that they would like to see, and we had all the drawings pretty much were about culture and what we see around us.
A lot of it is tied to what we eat and what we use for sealskin clothing and kayak, fish. All of it we get from off the land.
I think Inuit gravitate towards murals because it's showcasing your artistic ability to the community and to others when they come into the community. One of the things I noticed when I came back home from up north was I walk the streets and you can't really tell you are in a Inuit community or a community full of artists unless you see something traditional. Or so I wanted to make space for art outside from people. You know, it changes the whole feel of the community, and it's in a really busy spot of the town, so people get to see it a lot. And with the process of it, we would be out here in the flies and stuff, and the kids would be playing and riding their bikes, and they'd always come and stop by and ask questions. And that was probably my favorite part of it all, because I know that they're gonna grow up seeing something like this, and they're gonna think it's normal, and they're gonna want to create their own things and, you know, think creatively too. So I hope people feel inspired by the mural, and I hope that the interns especially feel a little bit more confident in their abilities. And yeah.
Well, he greatly surpassed his $50,000 fundraising goal. Tomorrow, we'll catch up with a grandfather from Labrador who walked an incredible 330 kilometers to send his grandson to hockey school. An update with the Bennowans tomorrow on Here and Now.
School is back for another year, but it's going to be a year like no other, and that could mean a lot of anxiety for students. We're going to get some tips for dealing with that coming up on Here and Now.
St. John's-based child therapist has concerns for students shuffling back into the classroom. Lisa Pinhorn works with autistic children as well as those with ADHD, OCD, and anxiety. She fears the return to the classroom will be hard for students, teachers, and parents, but she does have some advice. Here Now's Jeremy Eaton has that story.
After an unplanned extended break, school is back for another year, but it will be a year like no other. That means that some students and their parents could be filled with anxiety. So, how do you deal with that? Lisa Pinhorn is a family interventionist working with families who have children with anxiety. She knows that walking through these doors to school this year won't be easy.
Some schools have done a really good job with that communication. Some teachers themselves have sort of sent really great emails introducing themselves and saying who they are. But I think from the what ifs from the day-to-day stuff really has been missing from a lot of people's plans.
While some students have thrived in the homeschooling environment, others didn't fare so well. She says a lengthy break from the books might increase anxiety levels.
The real stress behaviors that we see in people are often misconstrued in the school setting as a misbehavior. Inability to sit, inability to pay attention, poking at the person next to you, running out of the classroom, are really anxiety-based behaviors.
New year, new teacher, and a whole lot of new rules.
And then we're really going to see some big stress behaviors if school is just about compliance. We call it in our world an avalanche, a cascading effect, a tsunami of mental health issues for our children.
Pinhorn feels the province could have done more during the COVID timeout.
We've missed an opportunity to really make our school system above and beyond what it looked like and put it on the same level as other places that are doing really, interesting, creative things to help lower the anxiety that's already was out of control before the COVID crisis.
But she has tips to help students, teachers, and parents navigate the uncharted waters.
We need to be super gentle with our body language and our tone of voice and say things like, you can't see under here, but I'm smiling, those kinds of messages of safety to children every day. Notch up our empathy for what everybody is going through here and realize that this is not normal time for learning and that we can pivot and make this experience a resilient experience for our children, but that just doesn't happen by accident. We got to have a plan around that.
Pinhorn says to drink lots of water, get outside as much as possible, and think about others and practice compassion. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, that's how to deal with children's mental health, but what about their physical health? What should parents be doing in order to keep kids safe as they head back to school? Well, Dr. Katherine Donovan is an expert in this area. She taught clinical public health at Memorial University, and she's here to answer some questions. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
So first of all, what are the priority areas? What are the things that parents should be focused on when it comes to back to school, and the things the kids should be focused on in order to keep them safe?
I think the most important thing is to put the fear in perspective and to make sure that people are feeling comfortable. Right now, it's very safe in this province. We know there's no community transmission, but we can't be complacent. People need to practice good hygiene and follow the recommendations. So it's important that children know about hand hygiene. They need to know about distancing, trying to avoid sharing their supplies with other children. Although I would say that if somebody shares by mistake, let's not get too excited about it. The issue of masks and where it's appropriate to wear masks and when it's okay to take the mask off. Those are the important things. I think when children come home from school, the washing of hands, those kinds of things, making sure they wash their masks at the end of the day and they have a clean, fresh mask the next day. Those simple measures.
A lot of parents may be worried. They're like, okay, my kid didn't wear a mask or they didn't wash their hands. How concerned should they be about making sure this happens all of the time? Because kids often do forget, especially the little ones.
Well, I would say at this time, this is probably the safest place on the planet to go back to school. We know we haven't had any evidence of community transmission for quite some time, and even then it was very limited. So I think it's pretty safe here, but we want to make sure that people have good sound practices that are going to carry us forward if we should develop some transmission, some community transmission. So I would say let's encourage them not to share, let's encourage them to wear their masks appropriately, but let's not overreact if they do share or if they've missed their mask at some point.
What are some of the things that people are focused on that maybe they don't need to worry about as much?
I think the main thing that people have stressed about is the surfaces, the backpacks, bringing your groceries home, those kinds of things. Obviously, you always try to keep things clean, but there's growing evidence that transmission from things, what we call fomites, is not significant. There's never been an outbreak that's actually been associated with transmission from things. It's theoretically still possible, but it's certainly not a source of significant transmission.
We know the area that is a concern is people gathering together in small spaces. We've heard concerns from parents and teachers that packing all these kids into a classroom isn't really going to be safe. What does the evidence show about what sort of risk is that?
So the issue of distancing is important, and obviously the further away you are, the less risk there is. But given the circumstance where we are now with the epidemiology or the evidence of disease in the community, I think it's pretty safe. The 2-meter rule is one that's certainly been common in North America. In other areas, the 1 meter has been used as a separation distance. So I think, given our circumstances right at the moment, that it's pretty safe.
Dr. Donovan, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Here's a live shot of St. John's Harbor. It's a nice evening. This evening, 16 degrees right now in St. John's. We're in for some rain and some windy weather starting tonight and continuing tomorrow. I'll have all your weather details coming up.
This weather forecast is brought to you by Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism. Take the time to explore this fall. Learn more at stayhomeyear.ca.
Time now for a look at the weather forecast, starting with the highs today. Not nearly as sweltering today in St. John's as it was yesterday. 18 degrees as the high in St. John's today. Very similar temperatures across the island, and cooler in Labrador today. Churchill Falls only got up to a high of 9 degrees. So here are your weather on the way headlines. Some rain heading in for the island tonight and tomorrow, and some breezy winds. Temperatures tomorrow going to start off nice and warm, but will drop off in the afternoon. And you know what? The weekend is looking pretty decent right now. I'll get to that in just a few moments. So looking at tonight, we have some showers for the island, clearing for western Labrador. Amounts, we're looking at 5 to 10 millimeters for the St. John's area, and you can see those winds gusting up to 70 kilometers an hour along the coast, so it's going to be pretty breezy. 10 to 15 millimeters of rain expected for the south coast tonight, 17 as the overnight low. Heavier rain, though, up the northern peninsula, the Grossmoor and Port au Choix area, 15 to 25 millimeters of rain expected there. So for Labrador, a chance of some drizzle along the coast and some patchy frost possible for later on this evening. So let's have a look at how things are shaping up tomorrow morning. If you're on the island, you're going to want your rain jacket as you're heading out the door tomorrow, because we're looking at some light rain for St. John's, Burin, pretty much the entire island tomorrow morning, but temperatures staying nice and warm to start the day. It will cool down, as I mentioned earlier. For Labrador, a mix of sun and cloud really across the board, and temperatures in the single digits to start the day. This is how things will unfold. Lots of rain for the island. You'll see the heaviest rain for the Avalon Peninsula around 1 o'clock tomorrow. And so it'll be a pretty gray, wet day all day today. We're looking at 10 to 20 millimeters of rain total tomorrow. And you see this note here about temperatures falling. So we'll start the day nice and warm, but as we get to around lunchtime, 2 o'clock, the winds will change to a northerly. So by the time we're in the afternoon, by the time you're heading home from school, temperatures are going to drop down. We're going to go down to about 13 degrees. So 19 to start, 13 to finish. So dress appropriately. 2 to 4 millimeters of rain expected for the Clarenville area, Marystown, about 5 to 10 millimeters expected there as well. Same story as well, with the temperatures starting off warm and then falling throughout the day. Grand Falls winds are heading up to a high of 14 degrees with some showers. Harbour Breton, 5 to 10 millimeters of rain expected there. And on the west coast, a little less rain. Winds northwesterly, 20 gusting to 40, and temperatures in the low single digits up along the coast. And for the Straits, Mary's Harbour getting up to 11 degrees with some chance of some afternoon showers there. Cartwright looking at 13 degrees as the high, and chance of showers for really all of Labrador tomorrow. Happy Valley, Goose Bay looking pretty good though, temperature-wise, 16 degrees as the high there. So we're getting into the weekend now. Look at the island. Really nice for most of the day. In the afternoon, you can see that cloud move in and that precipitation move through. So for the east, it's looking pretty nice, pretty decent. 16 degrees for St. John's, and for the Marystown area, a mix of sun and cloud throughout the day. The chance of that afternoon showers pushing through for the rest of the island. For Labrador, some showers expected there as well. Lab City getting up to a high of 10 degrees on Saturday. So Sunday, it's going to be a wet one again for Labrador. The island looking pretty clear, some heavier cloud cover on the west coast, but it's going to be a rinse and repeat sort of situation for the east, except without the rinse because there's no rain. 16 degrees for St. John's and a mix of sun and cloud again on Sunday for Labrador. There are those showers throughout the day. Happy Valley, Goose Bay looking at 15 degrees as the high. Looking to the long range now, so Saturday, Sunday, very similar days, but as we get into Monday, that rain comes in again, starts to clear off, but we're still in the double digits, the mid double digits temperature-wise. For central Labrador, some rain moving in on Monday, clearing off on Tuesday. Very similar as well for western Labrador on Monday and Tuesday. For Labrador in the west, some showers to start the work week. cool temperature, 7 degrees there. And for eastern Labrador, a chance of some showers on Monday and clearing on Tuesday. So let's have a look at your weather photo of the day. This one comes from Labrador City. Just look at this. Beautiful. It's cabin. It is Sarah Cornick's cabin in Labrador City. She said this was, she called this moonlit clouds at the cabin, and that certainly is that for sure. Beautiful photo. Thank you so much, Sarah, for sending that in. And if you have a photo you'd like to see on the show, just send it to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Well, with students heading back to class and COVID still in our midst, this is an anxious time for many families. But in some other countries, kids have been back in the classroom for months now. Denmark, in particular, has been held up as an example of how to reopen safely. The CBC's Renee Filippone visited one school in Copenhagen to see what lessons we can learn here.
It's lunch at an elementary school just outside central Copenhagen, and this really looks like sort of a pre-COVID school day, and that's the point. Schools in Denmark are on the second phase of their reopening plan, and there are limited restrictions now. Class sizes are back to normal, but hand hygiene remains paramount. The headmaster says it's really a challenge.
We've seen that many of our pupils are not aware enough, and they don't use the sanitizer, so we have to have one standing in the entrance reminding them. And that's what we will do for a period, and then I think they will be aware of it again.
Now, Denmark was one of the first countries to reopen schools right across Europe. It was a gradual process that started back in April when the COVID rate was on a steady decline. And unlike many other countries, schools were a priority for reopening and were in phase 1 before shops and restaurants. Now, at the time, rules were much stricter with staggered class schedules, many classes being taught outside, and the kids had to wash their hands every 90 minutes. Now, the teachers' union says that the reopening worked because of good cooperation with the government, who listened to and addressed their concerns, including letting staff with underlying conditions continue to work from home.
We have seen that cooperation on all levels have made people feel safe.
Dorta Lange says the teachers' confidence in going back helped quell the nerves parents had, who were concerned in the beginning that their children were being used as guinea pigs.
We're in this crisis together. We want to make the best of this. We want education to be as good as possible in these circumstances. And what can we do to make everyone feel safe in that?
Now, there has been an increase in COVID cases in recent weeks across Denmark, with some of the highest numbers they've seen since April. Since the reopening, there have been outbreaks in schools that have led to classes under quarantine, and some schools have shut down, but the problem hasn't been widespread. Authorities around the world, including Canada, have turned to Denmark for advice. And officials here have been happy to share lessons learned, but they also highlight that comparing situations in different countries is difficult because Denmark has a relatively small and spread out population compared to Canada. Renee Filippone, CBC News, Copenhagen.
Welcome back to Here and Now. Well, most Canadians will file their taxes for this year next spring. But last month, nearly 2 million taxpayers got a letter from the Canada Revenue Agency telling them to pay thousands now on money they haven't earned yet. As Yvonne Colbert tells us, the letter was real.
Mary Mullen couldn't believe her eyes when she opened the unexpected letter from the CRA last month.
I thought it was a scam, just printed on CRA paper.
The first thing she saw said she owed more than $3,000 in 2020 income tax by the end of this month. In the past, she's filed her income tax returns in the spring and paid then. But when she checked with the CRA, she was told the letter is real.
I kept telling them, like, you know, this is income I haven't totally earned yet, and I've always paid my taxes on time before they were due.
CRA says it's fair to ask people like the self-employed or those with investment income to pay before the deadline if their taxes are not deducted at the source. They point out most Canadians already pay their income tax throughout the year via paycheck deductions. The CRA says the letters were sent to 1.8 million people like Mullen who may owe $3,000 or $1,800 in Quebec in income taxes this year. A close read shows it offers options for reducing the amount or not paying at all. The letter is accurate, but this tax historian says CRA needs to make the message more clear.
But if you're someone who finds, as many people do, any communication from the CRA terrifying, this is set up in a way that doesn't highlight the fact that what they're offering is an option to pay smaller installments this year, or maybe none at all if your income has really been hit hard.
She suggests CRA do what it's done in the past and use ads with strong visual content to ensure the message is clear, similar to those used to inform the public about COVID-19. Back on PEI, Mary Mullen says she's now having taxes deducted from her income. She says she will pay before the deadline, but she worries about those whose employment has been hurt by the pandemic and who cannot pay.
You know, and for people who maybe are worse off than I am, you know, for paying it, I just feel terrible about it.
The CRA says if your income has dropped and the tax owing is less than $3,000, you can ignore the reminder. However, if you end up owing taxes, the CRA will charge interest. Yvonne Colbert, CBC News, Halifax.
Well, the leader of the federal NDP reacted today to news that the We charity is shutting down operations in Canada. Jagmeet Singh says that contract amounted to a bailout attempt by the federal Liberals.
Shutting down of We's operations highlights the fact that they were in need of a bailout. And it really bolsters the argument, as we've been saying, that the Liberal government was really just trying to help out an organization that was closely aligned with them. They were trying to help themselves out, and as a result, students suffered because the funding could have directly gone to student grants, could have gone to Canada Summer Jobs programs, could have gone to reducing debt for students that are in debt. There could have been immediate supports that went directly to students instead of a program which is clearly designed to help out close friends and to enrich members of the Liberal government instead of helping students.
Government and public health officials have long been pushing hard to get prevention guidelines out to the public. But there are some communities where radio, TV, and social media messaging may not be getting through. The CBC's Paige Parsons has that story.
Brent Weeb's family members live simply on their rural Alberta property. The conservative Mennonite family doesn't have radio or TV at home. They have internet, but they stay off Facebook and Twitter. Family and community gatherings are the center of their lives, which have been upended by COVID-19. Because of their lifestyle, many Canadian Mennonites face the added challenge of accessing accurate information about COVID-19. Worried his community isn't getting the facts and that COVID fatigue is setting in, Weeb is turning to technology, building a messaging system to distribute public health updates directly to subscribers.
So instead of asking people to go reach out and find this information, we thought, well, maybe we can make it a little easier to bring it right to them.
The updates will come via messaging apps popular with Mennonites, like Telegram or WhatsApp. The information is straight from public health officials, which Wiebe says his community is more likely to trust than media sources. He's hopeful he can attract subscribers in Mennonite communities across Canada. A recent Southeast Ontario outbreak hit the Mennonite population there, prompting public outbursts against members of the group. A reaction that's unfair, says this researcher.
Because many of them are communal minded and communally based, this just presents extra challenges for them. So I think what we do is have to recognize that and work with them to find ways to diminish the likelihood of the virus spread.
It's been hard for Wiebe's family to miss out on those community activities during the pandemic. While the technology he is relying on is new, his inspiration comes from Mennonite leaders who dealt with pandemics past.
And he said, it doesn't dishonor God when we use our minds to take preventative measures against disease. He said, it honors him when we use our talents. And so I would like to leave that as kind of this is sort of a Mennonite tradition. It's not wrong to take measures. It doesn't show a lack of faith.
He's hopeful others can also find faith in taking action against COVID-19. Paige Parsons, CBC News, Stettler.
Beirut got another hit today when a major fire ripped through a section of the port. Just over a month ago, Beirut was rocked by a deadly explosion that flattened a large area of the city. Firefighters and the military were able to bring the fire under control, and most of the flames are now out. There are no reports of injuries or deaths. The cause is still under investigation, but there are reports it may have been sparked by welding work, with cooking oil and tires. We have one more report to bring you before we wrap up for the night. It's from a budding young reporter in St. John's, and the story is about, fittingly, the first day of school. Just take a look.
Your street, ooh, 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 on your street, ooh, 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 on your street, ooh, 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 on your street. Hello, this is Arthur reporting for St. John's News. I'm going to this Fisherfield School. I hope you're feeling happy, and I hope you're having a fun life too, despite COVID. And I had a fun time at my grade 2 classroom. I went to grade 2. I can't wait for tomorrow on my second day of school. And yeah, this is Arthur reporting for St. John's News. On your street.
Well, that was a great report, Arthur. Thank you so much. And before we leave you, a quick look at the weather forecast for tomorrow. To start the day, it's going to be nice and warm, 19 degrees in St. John's, but going to cool down in the afternoon. Some fairly strong winds, 30 gusting to 70 along the coast, and lots of rain for the island tomorrow, 11 degrees in the Corner Brook area. Looking up to Labrador, some showers there as well, light winds in the west. 16 degrees in Happy Valley Goose Bay, so not too bad there, and some showers along the coast. 10 degrees as the high in Lab City, and lots of rain on the way for tonight as well on the island. So it's going to be a very wet, windy evening on the island tonight and into tomorrow as we head into the weekend. But then things are looking pretty nice.
Carolyn, it feels like this is kind of the end of summer. Like we've had such a good run in many places of the province that it's now like, you know what? Too bad.
Especially after
we're turning summer off.
Yesterday was really, really warm, and now the temperatures are just starting to go down. So.
School starts up, summer shuts down.
Yeah.
What can you do?
Still some really nice weather coming on the weekend, though, so that's good.
Looking forward to that. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.